All right, how y'all doing today? Welcome to week 21 of Life Imitating Movies. I am your host, Brad. Over there's my co-host, Mitch. So, how you doing this week, Mitch?
Doing pretty good. How about you? It's the weather's getting better. Memorial Day weekend just passed. It feels like summer. Everyone's getting out, doing some stuff. Good times ahead, hopefully.
Yeah, I guess weather's better. Yeah, I'm not a heat guy. I'm not. Humidity kills me. Plus these cicadas, man. I don't know how your car looks right now. My car is just littered with cicada guts.
Yeah, I got three dead cicadas that I got to dig out from a little crevice under one of my windshield wipers right now, and they hassle you anytime you go outside here in Maryland. But they're only going to be here for another week, maybe two. So just got to put up with them until then.
Oh yeah, and then the cleanup starts. And that transitions nicely into my first question. It really doesn't, but I was just figured. But so this week's question was what's the first movie that you actually remember going to see in a movie theater? And I had this thought the other day about like the first movie I ever went and saw. So I'm let's get you going on that first. What was that? What's your movie on that one?
Yeah, this is a question that will definitely date you as a person, where your answer will let people know how old you are, where they can easily look it up or they can just off the top of their head figure it out. So, for people that don't really like saying how old they are, not really a great question for discussion, but I think it's an interesting one. So, unless I'm mistaken, the first movie that I remember seeing in theaters as a kid was Flubber. And for people that may not know, that was a comedy starring Robin Williams, a kid friendly comedy about this kind of slime rubber thing that is kind of given life, and all sorts of crazy antics happen. It was an enjoyable kids movie. And I say that for the part that I was awake for because I actually fell asleep in the theater for part of the movie. So I guess my dad kind of wasted a few bucks with that. But I think that was the first movie that I remember seeing in theaters as a kid.
Right on. Yeah, I am. Robin Williams is obviously one of my idols, and we've talked about that a lot of times. And yet, my dirty little secret is I've never actually seen Flubber.
I wouldn't say it should be at the top of your watch list. It's an enjoyable kids movie. If I went back and watched it now, I'm not sure what opinions I might have about it. If it holds up, doesn't really hold up, if it's just a forgettable comedy. So maybe it's not that great, but one day if you wanted to check it out and add it to the massive list of movies that you've seen, I'm sure you could do worse.
Without a doubt, yeah. And so I guess with that, we'll go into mine. And the first movie I remember as a kid seeing in theaters was Natural Born Killers. Not kidding. Um, it's actually the 1990 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I remember going to see that. Me, my mom, my dad, and my brother, I believe, were all there. And I just remember the line. This was like it was my first memory, and it might be because I remember waiting in a long line to get into the movie. That's how popular that first Turtles movie was. And if you remember that first Turtles movie, man, it's dark. Like that's a dark movie, man. When you like actually watch it, it's like Splinter gets kidnapped and everything. But that's like, yeah, I just remembered that as my very first movie going experience.
Yeah, we've talked about it before, but honestly, I'm not as big of a fan as other people around our age that grew up with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles of the live action movies. I watched the cartoon growing up, and I really like that a lot more. Honestly, I just never caught on to the live action movies from the 90s.
Yeah, I guess because they were released before you were born, I think. Yeah, 1990. I think the second one was 92, and the third one, I'm not sure what year that came out, but yeah.
Well, I didn't want to make you feel old, but yes, I was going to say 1990 was 2 years before I was born. So I didn't really see them then, but obviously they were still very popular in the 90s, of course.
Yeah, good movies, though. I mean, I think they just announced Seth Rogen is doing a new CGI reboot of version of a turtle, so hopefully that one's solid.
We'll see how it turns out.
There you go. So my first story for this week is going to be Jeff Bezos was announced that he's going to be going into space on his, I guess if you're a billionaire, you need your space program. Virgin Mobile, Branson has his, SpaceX, Tesla, and now Bezos has his. So but he's actually going to be a voyage. He's going to actually go up in space on it. And it's just like, it's an interesting story. I mean, nothing earth shattering to be a tool and coin a phrase. But what do you think about the story, man? Do you wish you were a billionaire?
Well, I do, but I feel like this is what people must have been feeling when they were living in the time where it was a race to put the first man on the moon. You know, the first billionaire to go to space. Who is it going to be? So it looks like it's going to be Bezos. This to me was just a story about billionaires doing billionaire things. You know, it's just kind of a funny little he's going into space because of course he can. So good for him. I would go to space if given the chance.
That was one of my questions. Was would you go? Yeah, and reading the article, it seems like he's not like going like into a space mission. It just sounds like he's going up for 15 minutes and then like gonna be like, oh, cool, and then coming right back down.
That's all you really need. I don't think anyone really wants to spend days or weeks at a time in space unless they absolutely have to. Once you get a little taste, it's like skydiving. You're up there for a few minutes, and that's enough to satisfy the urge.
That makes sense. So honestly, man, you kind of led perfectly into my movie, which is it's First Man. First Man's my movie because, as you said, it was the space race to get who's going to be the first people on the moon. And First Man, I thought was an excellent movie about Neil Armstrong and really about like what was going on in his personal life when he was going up to the moon and everything. And obviously, I love Damien Chazelle, who did La La Land and Whiplash, which we discussed before on the show. So, have you ever seen First Man? Did you enjoy it?
I have not. Obviously, this one just came out in theaters a couple of years ago. It feels like probably longer because of COVID. Again, time is just a construct that seems like everything before COVID was so long ago. But I know I was going to say, I'm sure you liked it as a fan of Damien Chazelle as a director. And can you see, because I haven't seen it, can you see his style in this one that is in La La Land, that is in Whiplash? Can you see his touches in First Man?
I think so. I think his touches are. It's Justin Hurwitz, I believe is his name. That's the guy who does his scores, and he has a pretty distinct style with his music. And there's the score for First Man is phenomenal. I even for my demo reel that I have out there that I did for my camera work, I used one of the songs from First Man for my demo reel because it's such a gnarly track.
I was going to say, because of those movies that we've mentioned with La La Land and Whiplash, he definitely has an ear for music. I mean, he has to at this point. So, First Man, I'm sure, has a great soundtrack, and Ryan Gosling, correct as the lead, I'm sure he did a great job, and it's one of those biopics that people kind of take him or leave him. A lot of people have interest in him, and some people, they just don't really like the genre that much.
Yeah, this one came out. It was supposed to be a big Oscar player, I believe, and then for whatever reason, it didn't do well at theaters, and it kind of died a quiet death, if you will, and it didn't get nominated. And honestly, Gosling should have been nominated. Chazelle should have been nominated. Claire, I can't think of her name, but she should have been nominated. But it was just a great movie that unfortunately flew under the radar.
I see what you did there. So good job on that. That's a good way to kind of wrap up the discussion about First Man and lead into mine, where obviously I picked a space related story as well. And mine kind of ties into the Bezos thing, where I could see what happens in my movie just being a crazy experiment funded with the billions from Bezos. And that is the Cloverfield paradox. And if you're unfamiliar with this one, the premise is that astronauts go into space. They have this big particle accelerator to try to solve the energy crisis back on Earth. And I thought I could definitely see Bezos doing that, just constructing a big $1 billion experiment up in space just because he can to try and help solve some sort of crisis. So, Cloverfield Paradox, this is one I think catches a lot of flack from people. And I don't think it's the best of the series, but I definitely don't think it deserves a lot of the hate that it gets from people.
And I will disagree and say it 100% deserves to hate it. I saw it one time and I did not like it. I mean, if you remember, the release of this was It was supposed to go out on Paramount, and then I think it tested horribly, so they sold it to Netflix, and then nobody knew it was going to happen. And then on the Super Bowl, there was a commercial for the Cloverfield Paradox, and it said you will be able to watch Cloverfield Paradox as soon as the Super Bowl ends. And it was kind of the first time that had happened, where everybody's like, "Oh my God, wow, the new movie coming directly to Netflix." Now that's par for the course. But I did watch it. I thought I didn't really like. It had some good talent. I think David Oyelowo was in it or something like that, and it's got some great talent in it. But for me, it just didn't come together. And I thought the first two were excellent. So maybe that was what flavored my opinion of it. Was I was expecting something akin to the first two, and this one just didn't hit it for me.
Of course, you kind of said it where the first two, I think, set such a high bar that this one was a little jumbled, it was a little muddled. It was maybe going for something a little bit complicated where a lot of people, after watching it, had to watch YouTube videos or something that people made about how it connected to the franchise and what it meant and the ending and that sort of thing and everything that was going on in the movie. But for me, it's still solid, and I am a big fan of the Cloverfield franchise. So I hope that this lays bricks for the franchise to keep going, for them to experiment with different ideas and make a direct sequel to any one of these movies that came before, because I'm anxious to see some of those stories continued. But for me, the standout of this, you're right, it was a great cast, but the standout for me was Daniel Bruhl, who I think always does an amazing job whenever he's on screen in a movie. He always commits to whatever he's doing. So for me, he was definitely the standout in this. But I think it was a solid movie. It wasn't amazing, I didn't think, but it was definitely an interesting movie, at least.
Yeah, it might be time to go back and check it out and watch it on its own merits and see if I dig it more. Because there's been a few times I've seen a movie in theaters that had such high expectations. And I'm just like, that movie's horrible. And then I watch it again a couple years later. I'm like, not as bad as I thought.
An unfortunate news story from this past week is that Gone Girl actress Lisa Baines was involved in a hit and run and was in pretty bad shape, and hopefully she makes a swift recovery. But you just hate to see a story like this, not just because it happened to somebody famous, but just whenever something like this happens, when you read a story about a hit and run and the person is hanging on, and it really is terrible to hear something like this happen. But it's a shame that, again, this actress wasn't exactly a household name. So, the headline was Gone Girl actress because that's obviously the thing that she's most known for. If you see her picture and you recognize her from the movie, she wasn't starring in a million different projects. She had only a select few, if that. So just again, for something like this to happen to her, just very unfortunate.
Yeah. You sent over your sheet yesterday. I was like, wow, Mitch is really getting things started on a lighthearted foot over there. But yeah, no, it's I saw the headline. I did not recognize the actress. I actually had to go and look up and read the article and find out who she was in the movie. I guess she played the mother of Rosalind Pike's character, who was the Gone Girl. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a tragic story. That's one of the things I've always done is if I'm walking across the street, I look both ways like 2 or 3 times. Even at a red light, sometimes I'll get honked at because I will look both ways, even when the light turns green, because I have heard so many horror stories of drunk drivers plowing through. And I'm just like, all right, I'll just take the extra 10 seconds to look and make sure nobody's speeding my way. So it's the world, man. Sucks.
Absolutely. So let's transition into the movie side of this discussion now. And I really hope that we pick the same one on this because I picked partly this story to talk about this specific movie, and that's Gone Girl, obviously. So did we have the same movie pick on this story?
We did. I mean, it'd be hard not to pick the movie that's in the title of the article.
So we've talked about Gone Girl on the show a little bit before. I say that David Fincher is one of my favorite working directors these days. I absolutely love Gone Girl. I think the entire cast did a great job in the movie. I love how it's shot, it's directed. The first time I saw it, the story had me on the edge of my seat, literally. So I'm a big fan of Gone Girl, and I just love talking to anybody I can about it.
Yeah, Gone Girl is a great movie. I mean, and that's the thing about Fincher, where it's like Gone Girl is like a 10 out of 10 movie. It's not even my favorite David Fincher movie. Like that's how great of a director David Fincher is. I would rank Fight Club and Seven above Gone Girl, but I still, like I said, it's still a 10 out of 10 movie. And with Fincher, his visuals, man, like his color palette. We're gonna get into some real nerd talk here, but his color palette and the way he lights his movies and the blue hue he has is like one of my favorite looks of a director, of any director ever.
You're right. And if you go back, and I think Gone Girl is one of the better examples of that, if you don't really have an eye for this sort of thing, if you're a casual moviegoer, go back and watch Gone Girl and then keep an eye out for that when we talk about his color palette. Note how scenes are lit and the color in them and the color he decides to kind of filter or put over the camera or color correct. It's just masterful work.
Without a doubt, man. And I mean, Fincher is a notorious. He does like 100 takes every take. So like, there's some great stories out there about like even on Mank. Apparently, Gary Oldman, they had hit like 80 takes of like a simple scene, and Gary Oldman was just like, "I think we got it, dude. Come on, let's move on." And there's a million stories like that where this guy just does a million takes of like the simplest scene.
But that's how he crafts such great movies.
That is true, man. Great, great, great movie. All right, so my next story is a new roller coaster at Universal Studios. I absolutely love roller coasters. I'm a big guy. I get a little scared now going into a roller coaster that the thing's not going to like shut on me because I've had a few scares of that. But this roller coaster, dude, this story had a YouTube video of the actual coaster. So just did you watch that? Because the ride looks freaking awesome.
So I didn't watch the video. I did read the story, of course, because I hope one day I'll be able to go and experience it for myself and don't really want to watch a video that stimulates that experience beforehand because maybe, hopefully, someday in the future, I'll feel comfortable going back to amusement parks, which who doesn't love amusement parks? I'm a roller coaster fan too. I hope to maybe take a trip to Universal, Disney World, whatever it may be, and go on some of these new big attractions that have come out recently because theme park attractions just get bigger and better every year. The rides just get bigger and better. So I hope to go on this one day for myself.
Yeah, dude. And this one looks, I like this one because the story talks about how, it's the roller coaster is the main attraction, but it's got all these, the queue, the line or whatever has a lot of like stuff for you to do while you're standing in line. And those are always, I like those. I like where it makes the hour long wait go by quicker. And like these other rides, like one of my all time favorite rides is Disney World or Disneyland's Tower of Terror, which is a simple, drop ride. That's all it is. But like the whole story before you're actually on the ride is so awesome. That's like it became one of my all time favorite rides.
I agree. I really like when rides do that too, when they have themed props and sets and stuff to look at while you're waiting in line, and it really gets you more into the ride. So I really like when theme parks do that too. So, obviously, relating to the story, what Jurassic Park related movie did you pick?
I was gonna go Jurassic Park, but then this one seems really just full on related to Jurassic World. So I went with Jurassic World because that's what it is. It's Jurassic World, and that's a good discussion we can have too about how Jurassic World, was a kind of relaunch of a franchise that did it really well. I thought I love Jurassic World.
And I'll just say my movie pick up top too because it's very similar. It's one movie after yours, and that's Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. And I think we could just kind of lump them in as a discussion about this modern trilogy that they're doing with the franchise because I agree with you for the most part. I think Jurassic World was a good relaunch, even though it was pretty much just like Jurassic Park, but with a modern setting. It was essentially the same movie. And I don't really hold that against it because a lot of people say that, for instance, with Star Wars, The Force Awakens was basically A New Hope, but just with a modern setting. And I kind of agree with that, but I didn't really hold it against the movie. So, and I didn't do that with Jurassic World either. I liked it. I thought it was just okay. you can't even compare it to the original. Not nearly the same wonder or splendor or nuance as the original movie directed by Steven Spielberg. Doesn't hold a candle to it, but still solid in its own right. But then when you get into the rest of this franchise, I don't think it needs to exist.
Yeah, the first Jurassic Park is one of the greatest movies ever made. I mean, without a shadow of a doubt, and the visual effects of that. I mean, you got to think it's like Sam Jackson's like one of his early movies. You know, you got Wayne Knight in there, who I just read was Steven Spielberg saw him in Basic Instinct and like cast him. He didn't even have to audition. He was just like, get that guy for my movie. Then yeah, Jurassic Park's really great. But Jurassic World came along. I knew we probably weren't reinventing the wheel, but it's sometimes I'm good with just a good movie on the big screen, and that's kind of what that was. And the director Colin Trevorrow had done Safety Not Guaranteed, I believe, which was a really good movie with Mark Duplass, and you should check it out if you haven't. It's like an independent film, and I'm looking forward to Dominion, the next Jurassic World movie.
I feel like this one could go either way with Jurassic World Dominion, the third one in this modern trilogy. I think this is kind of like a make or break for the franchise. If they hold off on it for a while or if they just keep churning out sequels, I feel like this could be a Terminator Dark Fate where it's could be a stepping stone, it could be a bomb, and they just put it on the shelf for a while. So we'll see. They're really trying. It seems like they're trying their best to kind of reinvigorate that nostalgia by bringing back some original cast members, but transitioning into the second one of this modern trilogy, which is my movie, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. What did you think when you saw this? Because I thought it was a pretty dumb movie.
I still enjoyed it. I think Jurassic World's going to be a franchise because even the third Jurassic Park movie isn't the best. I still enjoy it because I'm a kid at heart and I like dinosaurs. But Fallen Kingdom I like because it had a little bit more of a horror element to it. The director, I can't remember what movies. I think he did The Orphanage, but I can't really remember. But he's a more horror-oriented director, and so I kind of like the more horror elements to Fallen Kingdom. The whole auctioning of the new dinosaurs and everything was whatever, which is kind of why I'm looking forward to Dominion in that the dinosaurs got out at the end of Fallen Kingdom. Spoiler, but I'm sure you've seen Fallen Kingdom by now. So the dinosaurs got out and they're running amok. I think it's going to be better than The Lost World, where the dinosaur got out at the end of The Lost World and that was a little cheesy. This one will hopefully have more of a cooler kind of story going along with the dinosaurs out in the world.
I hope so because that premise was a lot better to me. I wish I would have just seen that movie instead of what we got in Fallen Kingdom because what we got was just paper thin characters, lazy writing, stuff that didn't really make sense with the plot. It just and the whole clone girl thing too just it was just out of left field and not needed and that moment where she decides to release the dinosaurs and she says because they're like me, that was so dumb. It was just such a dumb moment and I thought we could do better than this with a dinosaur movie. So I guess I'm looking forward to the third one. I hope they stick the landing.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that. I do remember that now. I didn't remember that before you said it, but yeah, I can understand. I think the concept of they cloned dinosaurs, so did they clone a human is cool, but maybe that one didn't nail the landing in terms of that actual kind of twist.
No, so we'll see what happens with Jurassic World Dominion. Maybe it'll be good, maybe it'll be the franchise shelver for a while. So, in a bit of cross promotion for the new Disney Plus show Loki coming out, there is going to be Loki Charms, kind of not replacing, but maybe alongside Lucky Charms, with I'm assuming different shapes and marshmallows, and you got Loki on the box in a funny little cartoon drawing. So, I felt like this was a pretty good piece of marketing promotion, that this was an interesting idea that they came up with to help get the word out there about the show.
Yeah. I mean, they used to do cross promotion like that with cereals a lot back then when I was younger. They don't do it as much anymore. I'm not so sure it's different shapes though, because the box that they showed was the exact. It was literally just a new box with regular old Lucky Charms on the inside of it that they're charging $8 for.
Yeah, it might just become a collector's item. So I think you're right. I think maybe you see kind of on the box, go see this movie coming out, but you don't really get the full on different product that I think maybe you and me were a little bit more used to in our youth. So I won't be buying a box of this, but I thought it was a funny little thing to promote the show.
Yeah, it's not bad. Yeah, I'm not buying it. It was only a limited supply, and it's $8 a box plus shipping. I'm not paying 12 bucks, $13 for a box of Lucky Charms with a 30-cent redesign on it.
So obviously the Loki show, Loki related serial. I picked a movie that Tom Hiddleston's character Loki was in, and that's the movie Thor Ragnarok that I went with. And we've touched on this one a little bit before. Haven't really discussed it, but I'm not a fan of this one. I don't really like the story. I don't like what they did to Thor. I don't like what they did in terms of the setting. It just felt so off that I wasn't really watching a Thor movie. We weren't really getting that full story of Ragnarok, and we weren't really getting that full story of the Hulk being stranded on a planet and fighting as a gladiator. It just felt like a mixed bag of just a lot of jokes and not a lot of good writing or substance.
Well, to I'll say my movie was Thor, the first Thor, the introduction of Loki, but that will go into the larger discussion of, with the exception of Captain Marvel, Thor is my least favorite franchise in the series. However, I love Ragnarok, and I didn't. The first two Thors were. The first Thor was pretty good. The second Thor was horrible. Ragnarok, I loved because I love Taika Waititi, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. But I think that guy's hilarious. I was a fan of his long before he was the director of Ragnarok with Hunt of the Wilder People, and I thought it was hilarious, man. I love Taika Waititi's character in it is Korg, I think. He's the big like rock looking guy, which is cracks me up or whatever. And I think maybe you might have been. Sounds like you might have been more of a fan of the first couple of Thors with the more serious tone and everything. And then when they lightened it up, you were just like, "What the hell is this?"
Yeah, Ragnarok really strips Thor of a lot of his signature things. They cut his hair, they got rid of his hammer, they got rid of his dad, they got rid of Asgard, they got rid of his personality. They just it's not the same person, and it just to me it really showed. And it just seemed like a really pandering movie. It just seemed like here's a bunch of bright colors and jokes because that's what people like instead of anything of value.
I mean, yeah, I this is just an agree to disagree. I think because yeah, I like. I also like seeing Kate Blanchett in that one as the bad guy because I was like, I always like seeing these actresses that are like Oscar winners and like the movies they take are always like super like award and super like prestigious projects. I like seeing them in projects like Thor Ragnarok where they just get to go out and have fun. I think you get to see a different side of them as an actor, and that's why I like Kate Blanchett in that movie.
Well, I think you summed it up. I think we're just going to agree to disagree. So we'll see what they do with the Thor Love and Thunder movie coming out. Sounds like it might be a mix of both the older Thor and the jokey Ragnarok one. So we'll have to see what happens.
All right, so my last story today is a story of a guy who apparently was following his GPS so much that he crashed his car into a freaking golf course, man. And I just was like, at what point does common sense come into driving anymore? You're so focused on your technology that you don't even your eyes. You can't see your eyes if the road isn't there anymore. So I was just, what do you think about this story?
Yeah, kind of dumb. Like it said in the article, one person commented, they said, the GPS doesn't lie, just follow the directions. So it sounds like the guy just kept going in one direction and wasn't really looking where he was going. To be fair, it was at nighttime, but still, how does this happen?
Yeah, and at the end of the story, I was thinking the one thing I was thinking was like, the cops are there and everything, and they said the guy wasn't charged because he wasn't drunk or anything. I was like, I think I would rather tell the police I was drunk than have to admit that I was just that incredibly stupid.
So there are a few good golf-related movies if you went that direction to kind of pick to associate with the story, and you're shaking your head so you didn't. But I picked the comedy classic Happy Gilmore, and I think this is one of the few good Adam Sandler movies out there because it's early Adam Sandler, and this one to me is so quotable. And Christopher McDonald just plays a great villain. He's so dislikable but so great. So Happy Gilmore is a classic. It's one that I still like watching to this day.
Oh yeah, I love Happy Gilmore. I'm a giant. Even the worst Adam Sandler movie I can still watch, which is saying a lot because he's made a couple stinkers. But no, Happy Gilmore is a great movie. It's a great sports movie, a great comedy movie. It's just a great all around movie.
And people know it. There's not really a discussion here to say, oh, what did you like? What didn't you like? Everyone knows the movie. Everybody's seen it. It probably, as soon as you heard the title, maybe you want to go watch it now. So I'm curious, if you didn't go golf related movie for this, where did you go?
I mean, I went with this as a story about how people have become so reliant on technology that their intelligence has depleted. And so I went with Wally because if you remember in Wally, the humans are all in space. They're all big, fat. They can't even walk. They're all reliant, looking on their phones and everything. And it's pretty a prescient movie, man. Where it's just we are kind of heading that way. Where, I mean, I'm poor. People are getting fatter, and people just can't think and do things for themselves. It's a Pixar animated movie, but it's pretty on the nose in terms of where we may be heading as a society.
So I'll be honest, I haven't seen Wally before, and it's one of those ones kind of sitting on my Disney Plus queue. But would you say what was this comparable to with these kind of modern, more a little bit recent Pixar movies? Because this is one that maybe, of course, people knew about, but didn't quite have as much popularity as ones like Frozen.
So Wally for me is it's with the exception of the Toy Story franchise, it's my favorite Pixar movie. Um, I say, and I've maintained this since I first saw it, it is the most romantic movie ever made because the movie is all about how Wally falls in love with Evie and follows her to space. It is. I mean, this is one you should bring your girlfriend in, watch it with your girlfriend. It is a perfect date night movie, man. It is phenomenal.
I'll have to check it out one of these days. Some notable celebrity birthdays this past week, including the late Prince, God rest his soul, but the one that I wanted to kind of celebrate that people were talking about was Liam Neeson celebrated his 69th birthday this past week. And yes, that's part of the reason why I picked this story because I'm a child, because of his age, what age he turned. But also, Liam Neeson is a great actor. He's been in a lot of projects and movies that I really love watching. He's played some amazing characters. So I'm eager to see what movie you kind of picked associated with him if you didn't have anything to say about his big birthday this past week.
I mean, I absolutely love Liam Neeson. I've loved Liam Neeson back to Schindler's List, 1993. Just a great movie and great actor. And yeah, he's had some tragedy in his life. Of his wife famously was in a skiing accident. She passed away, and I remember, he after that he wasn't taking a lot of roles, and then his kids were just like, you gotta get back into it, and he went and did A-Team. Not my movie pick, but I actually really enjoyed A-Team, and I enjoy Liam Neeson in it. So, you want me to just launch into my pick?
Absolutely, let's hear it.
All right, so I went with Taken, the first Taken, because this was like the reinvention of Liam Neeson as action imposing movie star. And I mean, it does have one of the best monologues or quotes in movie history. I'll hunt you and I'll find you, and which people still quote. And I think as the franchise, that is one where the franchise is the law of diminishing returns because the first one I would rank as one of the best action movies ever made. I would call it a classic. 2 and 3, not so much.
No, I was really disappointed with the Taken sequels as well, but really loved the first one, like a lot of people obviously did. Was a box office surprise at the time. It made a lot more than the studio thought it would. So I really love Taken. Obviously, that's been a career-defining role for Liam Neeson, and I love the nickname that people affectionately give to it, which is Jerry Action. You know, like geriatric, Jerry Action. It's funny. I like that they call it that because he's a little bit of an older guy in the movie and in real life, just kicking ass, taking names. So I really love Taken. But I picked another one of his iconic roles, and that is as Qui-Gon Jinn in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And I wouldn't really say this is a career defining one. This was certainly one that obviously had a much bigger spotlight on it than his other roles, but it's not like he did a lot of other appearances as the character after this movie. And I hope that changes because I hope we get maybe a cameo from that character in the Obi-Wan show coming out. Who knows? It's a possibility. I'm not going to go in with that expectation, but I absolutely love his character in this movie.
Yeah, he was good. I'm not, as we said, I'm not a giant Star Wars guy, but I do remember the movie. I remember that was another one, man. I went and saw it. You know, my dad got tickets for the big theater out in Maryland, like a balcony theater or whatever, where they do like movie. I think Edward Norton's had movie premieres out there because he's from Maryland. And so we actually went and saw this and waited in line for it and everything before you could reserve your seats. And I mean, I enjoyed it. And yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go much further. Liam Neeson's awesome and everything. The worst Liam Neeson movie is still a great movie.
So I will just wrap it up by saying that, of course, the Star Wars prequels get some flack, but I think people tend to agree that he was one of the better parts of that movie, of the first one of the prequels. And I will vehemently argue with people that that is the best lightsaber fight in the franchise when you have him, Ewan McGregor, and Darth Maul all fighting together with their lightsabers. I will defend it to the death that that is the best fight that you have in the franchise so far. Jury's still out on future installments, but that to me is my favorite.
Well, I guess we'll agree to agree on that. All right, so we have a new movie of the week this week. We went with the Conjuring. The Devil Made Me Do It. Yeah, spooky. I'm going to let you go first. What did you think of this movie, Mitch?
I liked it. I think this is another one that it's getting a lot of flack online. A lot of people seem to really have been disappointed by it, but my initial reaction after watching it was that I liked it. I thought it was certainly different than the first two Conjuring movies because it's a little bit of a different premise, different setting, and we won't go into spoilers because it just came out, obviously, so we'll stick to talking about it at the surface level, but overall I liked it. Not quite as much as the first Conjuring because that's my favorite in the franchise, but I thought it was solid. I thought it was good.
So I will say, if this was just called The Devil Made Me Do It, not The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, I feel like I would have enjoyed it more because it was a solid possession movie. But the first two Conjuring movies creeped me out. Like, legitimately creeped me out. This one didn't creep me out at all. This one didn't have me, like, checking over my shoulder when I had to go pee, in the middle of the night, like, ooh, the ghost's gonna get me. The first two legitimately, like, were, like, creepy movies where you're just like, whoa. This movie was just, for me, it was just a possession movie. Not bad. Not the best. In terms of a Conjuring movie, it just fell way short for me because I was not scared. I was not creeped out. It just didn't hit those notes that I expected from a Conjuring movie.
That's fair, and I will agree with you on that, that the scary movies, the good ones, they stick with you after you finish watching it. They're creepy, and they have you looking over your shoulder or hearing noises at night by yourself. And I didn't really get that from this movie either. And again, it's because I thought it was obviously a little bit different from its predecessors. To me, this was kind of like looking at, if I thought the first Conjuring was The Dark Knight, this was kind of like The Dark Knight Rises. Is it as good as the one that came before it? It's apples to oranges. It's a difficult discussion topic, but that's because it's different and it's maybe not as good, but it certainly tries and it certainly does something that we haven't seen before. And I had to commend it on that. So it is different, but I liked the conflict that was at the center of this movie.
I guess, yeah. One thing that took me out of it was the special effects. You know, some of the kind of jump scares almost in the movie where the bodies would contort, which I don't think is a spoiler. They were contorting bodies in the movie. I This took me out of it because I was just like, that's so odd. I just it didn't like. And I'll even say in the second one there was the crooked man who kind of had that same contortion movement, but the lead up to the crooked man was creepy as hell. This one didn't have that creepy lead up, so when they did that SFX contortion stuff, I was like, it does nothing for me.
Yeah, I think you're right because not only is it something we've seen before in the Conjuring franchise, but it's something we've just seen before in general. Another good example of that would be if you've seen It and when he is stuffed in the fridge and he comes out from the 2017 version, he does that. So it was kind of like been there, done that. And I agree with what you said earlier, where the creepiness factor probably could have been dialed up a little bit more, where I wasn't getting that same sense of dread and terror that the first two installed a little bit better in me. But again, I won't go into spoilers because it kind of deals with what happens and what the movie is kind of about. But I really liked the idea of the central conflict in this one. It's not a spoiler to say it's not a haunted house movie. It's more of a possession movie, but I like the factor behind the possession and the idea that presented in the movie.
I'll agree with you on that. Yeah, I like that. You know, in the beginning of the movie, it's going to be kind of like a courtroom kind of movie, which I was kind of hoping they would lean into a little bit because that, for me, would have been a very interesting thing, maybe just told through flashback through the eyes of this court story. They didn't go that route. Apparently, there's another movie that kind of leans into that. I think it's called Exorcism of Emily Rose or something like that. I thought that's what I read. So I may have to go check that one out again or to maybe fill my courtroom possession movie, whatever. But yeah, this one was just, if they would have taken Ed and Lorraine Warren out of it and just had it as The Devil Made Me Do It and been like, I don't know, I may have enjoyed. I did enjoy it as a standalone movie. I enjoyed it. Just didn't creep me out. I'm not. It's not one I'm going to watch again. First two, I'm going to watch again.
Sure. So you kind of touched on a little bit before, and I agree with you where The Conjuring is probably one of the more solid horror franchises we have these days. And when I say that, I mean the core Conjuring movies because some of the spin-offs have been just awful. Not good movies. The Nun, The Curse of La Llorona, one or two of the Annabelle movies, just terrible movies. But I don't really count those. When I say Conjuring, I mean the Conjuring movies. And they've been pretty solid so far. And I think you're right. Again, I like this movie. It may seem like we have a lot of negative things to say about it, but transitioning into the parts that I liked, again, I like the central conflict. A lot of people agree that the dynamic between Ed and Lorraine was front and center even more in this one, and you really felt for them as humans, and I agree with that as well. And you touched on it a little bit earlier too with the effects where yeah the bending was kind of been there done that, but I definitely noticed that this one had a little bit bigger of an effects budget and I thought it played out really well because of it.
Right on. And I will agree. Yeah, the Ed and Lorraine Warren, those are the reason you watch Conjuring movies because I don't know if you've ever actually read up on them or anything. Lorraine Warren just passed away, I think, last year or 2 years ago. So she was around for a while. I think she was a consultant on the first two Conjuring movies, and they're great characters, man, because they could be played as crazy people, but they're not. And I like that because it takes the material serious, you know?
So I will agree with you on that. I actually just had this discussion with someone the other day where because it takes place in the movie, you have to believe what they're saying. But in real life, I would probably think they were kooks, that they were just exploiting people. But because you have to take what they say for granted in the movie universe, when they say something is happening because of a demon or a ghost, you have to believe them. But I don't know how much credibility I really give them in real life.
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying, which is in real life, yeah, I don't, I believe in ghosts, yes, I do believe that ghosts are a real thing. Do I believe that people like Ed and Lorraine Warren and these morons on paranormal hunters and all that possibly are taking advantage of people? Yeah, I believe they are. I don't actually believe that people are clairvoyant and all that garbage. I think people are just like, I got to make a living. Oh, there's idiots out there. How can I get their money? So, but that's kind of what I was saying was the movie takes them serious, and you need that seriousness. You need these great performances from Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson to invest in these movies. And in that, I genuinely appreciate their performances, the direction, and everything. And because you're watching a movie where these are not crazy kooky characters. These are people who can talk to the dead. These are people who can conjure uh, evil spirits.
I agree. I think the leads really commit to this franchise, and they're obviously the heart and soul of it. And as long as, again, James Wan continues to be involved going forward, then I'll have confidence in this franchise, in the core Conjuring movies, because James Wan didn't direct this one, but of course he was a producer, and this is his love child because he was there from the first one and all these subsequent ones where he had at least some input on the Conjuring universe movies. So as long as those three, Patrick Wilson, Vera Farmiga, if I'm saying that right, and James Wan, as long as those three are involved going forward, I will happily watch any of those core Conjuring movies going forward if they continue to make more, and I hope they do.
Yeah, I'm not so sure how much James Wan had. I mean, I know he was a producer on it because obviously he made, and I think he came up with the story idea for this one, which I think was literally just let's do this story. But he didn't write it and he didn't direct it, and I'm not sure how much creative touch he had on it. And I think going forward, it seems like his involvement with the series, if it does go forward, as you said, will become less and less to almost non-existent. And it's like you said, this one was directed by it's directed by I don't know the guy's name, but this guy did The Curse of La Lorna, which I did not enjoy. And so going into this movie, I was just like, all right, is this guy going to make another La Lorna movie, which is going to be not really that great? Far better than La Lorna, but nowhere near the first two.
That's fair. And again, the degree of quality for The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It is up for debate, and people are still talking about it. But I think, again, going forward, if you just have even kind of the average quality of those three movies put together, and you average out their quality going forward, if you have that same level in future installments, I think this franchise could be around for a long time. And I think it's set up perfectly to do so because essentially it's an anthology series. You have Ed and Lorraine Warren, who are the heartbeat that show up in all these movies, but you can tell totally different stories with totally different supporting casts in totally different settings and time periods. So it lends itself to be keep being made into more movies, which usually I'm not for just endless sequels being churned out. But I think in this case, the story supports it for the Conjuring franchise.
So let's see if you agree with this, because one thing I think that they should do with the Conjuring franchise is Amityville Horror, because Ed and Lorraine Warren did they were consulted on the actual Amityville Horror case, and I think they even make reference to that in the first movie. And so Amityville Horror has been a franchise that's been dormant forever. I mean, the original one came out in the '70s. There hasn't really been a good one since. And I think a great next Conjuring movie would be reboot Amityville Horror, merge it with The Conjuring. Ed and Lorraine Warren, your central characters, familiar story of The Conjuring, bring them together. I think that could be a phenomenal Conjuring follow up.
I agree. I think the door is certainly open because obviously they kind of touch on the case at the beginning of the second one when they're there and they're investigating, but that doesn't mean that they could go back and show, oh, here's what happened when they did their whole investigation. So I don't think the door's closed on possibly doing that. And I think you're right. I think we're due for a good Amityville horror movie because, again, the ones that we've gotten haven't really been that good. So I think we're due for one of those. And I think you're right. It would be a good launching pad for a Conjuring Amityville horror movie. So I don't think this franchise is done with this one. I don't think they're done with number three. If nothing else, they're going to continue to probably do more spin offs, but I really believe in my heart of hearts that they're not done with this franchise, that there are going to be more because they probably will continue making money and that people like them. And again, they're one of the more solid horror franchises that we have out there these days. So I think they're going to continue to do more. And I hope that that's one of the stories that they do.
Yeah, I 100, and yeah, they are making money. The movie just opened at number one in theaters when it's also available on HBO Max right now, and so the movie is they people are still turning up. People are still making money, and as long as they make money, they'll continue making them. And maybe it sounds like I was crapping on the movie a whole lot. Like I said at the beginning, I'll just end it with this: I enjoyed it as a possession movie. It was a solid possession movie. Just it didn't creep me out the way I wanted it to.
That's fair. And I will say, of course, up top, the same thing that I enjoyed it too. I maybe enjoyed it then more than the average person, maybe more than you a little bit. I thought it could have been improved, but it was still a good entry for the franchise. So I think I know your answer, and I kind of already said mine too, but will you continue to watch the Conjuring movies going forward?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, 100%.
Same answer for me as well. I will definitely continue to check out future installments in this franchise. I'm a big horror fan, and when it's done right, when it's not just endless jump scares, which does not count as a good horror movie, when it's done right, I absolutely love the genre. So I'm looking forward to more. Hopefully, they continue, and we'll have to see what happens in the future.
All right, so that's going to wrap it up for week 21 of Life Imitating Movies. Hopefully, we pick some good movies for you to go back and check out, some you haven't seen in a while. Hopefully, Conjuring made me do it, Devil made me do it was maybe a good discussion that makes you want to go check it out. Anything you want to add, Mitch?
Sure. So hopefully, we contributed something a little bit different to the discussion about this new movie, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. Hopefully, we weren't just reiterating a lot of what people are saying online, that we brought some interesting viewpoints and maybe made people want to see it a little bit more. So hopefully we added a little something to the discussion.
Yes, sir. And so we will be back next week. We will have another new movie, another HBO movie that will be on HBO Max and in theaters. However, I may go to the theaters to see this one because it is one I've been anticipating for over a year, and that's In the Heights. I am a musical fan, and I cannot wait for this movie.
Absolutely. So thank you to everybody for watching, listening. We'll be back. New episode next week, same time. In the Heights, new movie of the week. So should be another great episode.
Yes, sir. Take it easy, everyone.